Jay here. Today, I got a couple of comments on my console wars vids about me. I really didn't go in much of depth with the Sega 32X and things like that. Well, that was kind of really based on the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis. I really didn't go into much depth with the Sega 32X and things like that. So people didn't feel that I really covered it and things like that. Well, I covered it briefly, but today I'm here to actually talk about the 32X. Okay. As you see here, this is the 32X that you can see here. Pretty much this is the bastard stepchild of the Sega family, okay? Pretty much this thing was a failure from day one. The main reason why it failed is that right when this thing came out, the Sega Saturn was already being announced. And the Sega Saturn was announced, and I think even the Sega Saturn was already released in Japan, if I'm not mistaken. Sega Saturn, I think, came out around 1994 in Japan, if I'm not mistaken. And this thing came out around that same time. And pretty much, this thing was a flop from day one. Because people didn't want to go and spend $150 on an add-on to a console that's on its way out. You know, that's like adding an add-on to the PS2 just before the PS3 comes out. You know, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You know, and that's the reason why people didn't buy the 32X, and that's the reason why there was no support for it. You know. Because mostly around that time, 1994, 1995, the next-gen consoles were coming out, and nobody wanted to support this thing. You know, people were focused on the PlayStation, the Sega Saturn, and N64, which was in development at the time. So pretty much this was just a quick cash-in by Sega, and pretty much this is something that really ruined Sega's credibility in later years. You know, Sega had really strong credibility going in, but once the Sega CD came out, the Sega CD didn't really do all that well. The Sega 32X was like a big nail for Sega in the hardware business. So pretty much this thing was a big cash in from day one. And I would show you some games on my 32X, but the only problem is that I lost my connector cord that goes from the 32X to the Genesis. So I really can't turn this thing on and actually show you. I probably could, but the thing is you would get no video. So I really can't show you any videos of this. It's like a fucking colossal mess in this bitch. The only games I really own, I only own 4 games, which are Virtua Racing, Star Wars Arcade, Virtua Fighter, and Doom. Those are the only 4 games I own for the 32X. The only reason why I own a 32X is because I'm a video game collector. That's the only reason why I own a 32X. And I don't feel like going out and trying to find that connector wire for the 32X either, so it's just going to stay here and collect dust. So, and that's what it deserves to be, because this thing just isn't worth getting. I don't care if you're paying $10 for this thing. This thing ain't really worth getting, you know. It's not worth it. Just stick to playing your Genesis, you know. My advice for Sega around that time, Sega should have just never released this thing out. If Sega wouldn't have released this, I would predict that Sega would have had better credibility, and possibly people would have been more behind Sega during the Saturn years and the Dreamcast years. That's just my 2 cents anyway. So let this thing go up into the hardware, up into the sky. That's all I gotta say. Out.